Hey guys, alright, so today we're going to be talking about the Mongols. Super important topic in world history. Alright, let's go. So, Mongols were among the numerous nomadic tribes that lived in Central Asia. So this is going to be talking a little bit more, expanding on that ancient China stuff. Okay, so the Mongols lived in the harsh climate of the Eurasian steppe. And a steppe is an area with little rain and extreme temperatures. So think like a desert, right? Okay. So Mongol life centered on herding animals, particularly horses. It's going to be when you see the first domestication of horses. Mongols also lived as nomadic clans searching for better pasture lands. Okay? So as a result of their lifestyle, the Mongols were these really tough warrior type people who, you know, every now and then would just happen to raid nearby settlements. Cool? Okay. So, from 1200 to 1206, this really important guy you need to know in world history named Genghis Khan comes onto the scene. From about 1200 to 1206, this guy is going to unify the Mongol people. So rather than being these nomadic people, he's going to start to get them to be settled and joined together. So he's going to build this really powerful army and then begin this 21-year conquest throughout Eurasia. So if you guys look, just watch as this thing gets bigger and bigger on this map. And by 1279, he's got all of Asia, pretty much, other than like India and the Middle East. Okay? So under Genghis and then later Khans, the Mongols are going to conquer all of this territory. So they've got like modern-day Mongolia, going all the way through the steppe, all the way up to the Byzantine Empire, which we talked about last unit. And this is also going to be parts of like modern-day Korea, the Islamic Empire that we're going to talk about next video, Central Asia, China, and even Russia. Okay. So how did the Mongols create this massive empire? So a lot of that was through being these really excellent horsemen. Like I said, they've domesticated these horses, and they're using the horses to shoot arrows while riding and go out and search and be able to travel further distances. Okay. Genghis, that guy Genghis we talked about, was this really strong military organizer and strategist, but his greatest tactic was this idea of going and traveling, conquesting through terror and fear. So like if you guys look at some of these pictures, it'll show the Mongols attacking these different villages. They were pretty brutal the way that they would do it. So they would get to a point where if an enemy refused to surrender, Genghis would then order that person to death, order the death of not only that person, but also the entirety of the population. So as their reputation spread, different towns started to get word of, okay, well, if we get this guy coming into our town, he's going to destroy not only like anyone who tries to refuse, but all of us. So a lot of people are going to end up surrendering to Genghis without even fighting. They're just like, we give up. Okay. So some of the impact of the Mongol Empire, Mongols were really merciless in battle, but once it came to actually ruling over a territory, they were pretty tolerant. So basically, if they came to a territory and someone said, we're cool with you taking us over, they'd be pretty accepting rulers, and they'd even adopt some of the culture of the people they conquered. But if they tried to attack, then the Mongols would brutally and ruthlessly kill them all. So in the end, people would just be like, we'll just stay with the Mongols. They're cool. As long as they don't kill us, it's fine. So in the West, the Mongols converted to Islam after hearing about Islam and its spread into that area. And then in the East, the Mongols are going to embrace Chinese culture and some of their different ways of life, including Confucianism. So the Mongol Khans brought stability in Eurasia, order to Eurasia. And it's known from about the mid-1200s to the 1300s in this thing called Pax Mongolia, which means Mongol peace. So during this peace, the Mongols guaranteed safe passage across the Silk Road, and trade and cultural diffusion increased between both Europe and Asia. Also, Chinese technologies like gunpowder and the compass would reach as far as Europe because of these conquests. And diseases like the plague, or also known as the Black Death, also reached Europe. So after the death of Genghis, the Mongols are going to end up dividing into these four khanates, which kind of means just like a separated area, ruled by a son or grandson of Genghis. So they had to be descended from Genghis in order to rule these areas. The Khanate in Persia are going to end up controlling the Silk Road, which we talked about earlier, and the Silk Road's a really important thing for cultural diffusion. And then also the Mongols end up destroying Kiev, and that increased some of the importance of Moscow in Russia. And then the Mongols were the first non-Muslims that ended up ruling over the Islamic Empire. So after some of the different empires that we'll talk about in the next unit, once those fell, the Mongols ended up taking over, and they weren't Muslim. They followed different religions like we've talked about. The most significant Khanate, though, was the Mongol ruler over China, just because this person would control so much of that territory. So in 1279, Genghis's grandson, another important guy you guys really need to know, is Kublai Khan, who became the first foreign leader to rule China. So Kublai Khan's going to end up adding this new era in China known as the Yuan dynasty. You guys probably remember it from that Chinese dynasty song that we talked about. Kublai enjoyed a lot of this Chinese culture so much that he ended up moving the entire Mongolian capital over to China. But the only problem with that, he excluded the Chinese from serving in higher government offices and tended to rely on foreigners to serve in his government. But he proved to be a pretty good emperor for China. Under him, foreign trade with China increased due to that Pax Mongolia-Mongol peace. He also built roads and extended the Grand Canal to help improve transportation in China. And then there was this other guy. Make sure you guys know him. If any of you have ever played the game in the pool, you will know this person's name, but you may never have known who he was.
Marco Polo! Marco Polo! Marco Polo! Marco Polo! Marco
Sì.
Polo! Marco Polo!
Scusa,
Polo!
ma io sono Marco Polo, ma
This guy, his name is Marco Polo, right? Marco Polo. Oh, okay. All right. So in 1275, this European merchant is going to visit Kublai Khan's court. And Kublai was really impressed with Marco Polo because he was this big traveler, and he came in with all of these new ideas, all these Western things that he was bringing to the Mongols. And Kublai was so impressed, he ended up employing him in the Yuan government for 17 years. So Marco Polo is going to go and live out with the Mongols for like almost 2 decades. Pretty cool. So when Marco Polo ends up returning to Italy in 1792, his stories of China increased European demand for Asian trade. So people in Europe really wanted some of the goods and things that Marco Polo brought back and had talked about from his travels. So by the time of Kublai's death in 1294, the entire Mongol Empire was kind of getting a little bit more weak. And that's mostly due to you've got these 4 different leaders ruling over 4 different areas, and these areas don't really talk to each other. So they're starting to develop their own cultural identities, and they're separating from those other groups. So in 1330, Mongols lost control of the Persian area, which was some of the most important lands to own. And by 1368, the Chinese are going to overthrow the Mongols and start this new dynasty called the Ming dynasty. And then by 1370, they lost control of Central Asia. And then finally, in 1480, under Ivan III, Russia gained independence from Mongol rule and started this thing called the Romanov dynasty, which if any of you have watched Anastasia and are interested in that stuff, we will be into that stuff in a lot more detail when we get to World War I in February. And that's all I have for you guys. Hope everyone enjoyed talking about the Mongols. See you next time.